Are you married?
I'm married. Do you know who I had on was a great guest? It's Jesse. You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And we will be doing politics this evening because we have as our guest State Rep Ken Dunkin. He is a Democrat from Chicago. And if you're watching this on the Illinois channel, which airs across the state of Illinois, don't say, oh, we're not going to pay attention, we'll turn that dial, because that's Chicago. The issues that we're talking about here today concern the entire state of Illinois. Some concern the United States. But the issues of whether it's in Chicago, it's not peculiar to Chicago. State reps talk about whether they're upstate, downstate, they're talking about spending, they're talking about taxes, they're talking about education, and a lot of the similar problems. Some things are specific to Chicago, but you got inner cities throughout the state of Illinois in a sense, or problems of education when you go to Decatur and so forth, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so that's what we're going to be talking about. Mr. Dunkin, Representative Dunkin's been there. This is his 6th year in the state legislature. We were reminiscing before the show when he went in 2002. That's when it was an open seat, wasn't it?
It was an open seat.
And that's when the real races in the Democratic primary, you had 3 opponents. You didn't even get a majority. You got a plurality, right?
Absolutely.
And you really haven't had a challenger since. So you're saying that you knocked your challenger off the primary ballot this year. You knocked your challenger off the general election ballot this year. This is the way you do it in Chicago. This is the way Barack Obama started when he ran in '96. He had 4 people, including somebody who held the seat before. He knocked them all off, right?
Yes.
That's it. That's the show, folks. No, we'll talk about it. All right, so Mr. Dunkin, Lincoln Park High School, Harold Washington College, Associate of Arts degree, a bachelor's in political science from Morehouse College, master's in social work, SSA, School
of Social Work.
Yeah, but it's Social Service Administration.
SSA.
There we go. University of Chicago, a great school. We always put in a plug. Anybody who goes to the University of Chicago is an okay guy. No, actually, he's a good guy.
Usually.
Social worker, practiced as a social worker, was director Robert Taylor, Boys and Girls Club, consultant for various entities in Chicago, and a member of Rod's Film Task Force. We'll be talking about that because out of that came legislation.
Yes.
Or maybe that was before. So when you're seeing films and you want to know why they're being made in the city of Chicago, you got Ken Dunkin to thank for that, right?
That's right.
Maybe
And a whole lot of other
Berkowitz.
legislators.
And maybe, well, you might want to, there's some intrigue to the show. You know, most of the state reps are thought to be, especially the Democrats, but not just Democrats, thought to be ruled by Speaker Mike Madigan, who's been there almost, 3 decades, except for a coffee break, 95 to 96. And then there's Ken Dunkin and a few others who go their own way, some would say, and align with Governor Rod Blagojevich. A lot of what's happening, as everybody would know, you would know this, Ken, all that's going on in Springfield these days is because Speaker Mike Madigan and Rod Blagojevich, the governor, essentially hate each other. And then they're just fighting this out like 2 guys in the sand lot, and one throws sand in the other's face, the other goes and argues with the teacher and says, look what he's doing, and then the press, and the press say, okay, look what the other guy's doing. And this just goes on and on and on. This has been the Democratic Party for now, basically most of the last 6 years since Rod came in, right?
It has been a very, very interesting year of sorts.
Not just year, but it's getting old is what I'm saying. It's not even entertaining anymore. It used to be entertaining.
It's gotten old a year and a half, 2, 3, 4 years ago now. And a number of us in the House of Representatives, certainly, and in the Senate, and especially people here in the state of Illinois, could really care less about 2 adult men and their issues towards one another. It's about the business of the people in the state of Illinois.
Is it about Speaker Mike Madigan? Is this love of self that he wants to continue to be dominant in the House and the state legislature and the state? Or is he setting the table for his daughter, Lisa Madigan, who's the Attorney General and thought to be a candidate in 2010 in the Democratic primary for governor? So is it about Lisa or about Speaker Mike?
You know, I've heard several theories.
Theories, you've been there 6 years. You know the inside dope.
Proclamation.
Our viewers want to hear the inside dope from Ken Dunkin. Give it to him straight.
You know, if the speaker is doing it for his daughter or not, if he's doing it because he really just wants to be the man of the century, I don't know the exact answer to that. But I do know that in our business, and you know this as well, Jeff, you can't necessarily forecast your political future. I mean, if you look at who is the U.S. Senator now, Dick Durbin is one of the few people who had a career in politics. Senator Paul Simon, he was a journalist just like you. Back in the, 70s, he ran for office. It's very difficult. Some of the people that you expect to be in a particular seat or position or office, they don't necessarily make that particular journey. Dan Hines ran. You had Gary Chico who ran. You had
Barack Obama took it
Barack
away from
Obama.
all.
You had Blair Hull, who he spent a lot of money. And Barack Obama, during the name of that time, with Osama, you would have never made the connection that he would be a U.S. Senator in that climate back in 04.
Well, you know, some of us did because he came on public affairs starting in 2001, and
Okay.
then in 02, 2 times, and then in 03. So by the time
That's
he's
it.
really running, I could see this guy's a little different from the run-of-the-mill politician.
Sure.
As Brock said then, he knows the issues, he speaks out, and he has a vision. It's kind of those 3 things. He knows the issues, he speaks out, and he has a vision.
Yes.
It turns out there aren't many people in politics who can say those 3 things and be truthful.
Barack Obama, he certainly,
It turns out it's a harder thing than you would think to be a thoughtful, intelligent, articulate spokesperson. You know, there are people who say you couldn't say initially that Barack was articulate because that was racist, because there were people who said, we don't expect blacks or African Americans to be articulate. And I said, no, they missed the point. Barack wasn't articulate for a black guy. He was articulate for anybody.
that's right.
You know.
And he still is.
And he still is. And so that's the strength that he had. I mean, you mentioned Dan Hines. He's got a lot of strengths, but people don't tend to speak of him as well-spoken. He's getting better. He's been practicing. And Gary Chico, certainly well-spoken, but he had no base. The trick to Barack Obama is he had a base, he understood politics, he understood public policy. I mean, am I right? You knew Barack because you've known him, you said going back to 1991, right?
I met Barack Obama in 1991, 92 at the University of Chicago when I was a student, and we met on the basketball court, and we played. We ran for office in 95, 96. He won, I lost. I ran again, so we served together, we've known each other, and he is someone who has always stood out. And quite frankly, you would have thought Barack back then would be such this gregarious personality, if you will.
You wouldn't have thought that.
Enough to be a U.S. Senate candidate, let alone running for U.S. president.
Because he was not initially a natural campaigner. He was kind of the intellect, right?
Laid
He was a
back,
little bit too overly intellectual.
you know, maybe for some, but a down-earth guy. I mean, his disposition is different than mine. I'm probably a little bit more energetic usually. And if you look at your typical elected official, if you look at from Ronald Reagan to even George Bush, they have a certain personality or hype about themselves that generates a level of attention that says, like, look here, put the microphone in front of me, put the camera in front of me. Barack Obama never exhibited that level of sort of populist approach.
But let's go forward, because right now, you were taping this on August 17th. People are going to be watching this in the Chicago metro suburbs the week of September 1st. They're going to be also watching the Republican convention that week. By the time they see this, Barack will have been not the presumptive nominee, he will be the nominee for president of the United States in the Democratic Party. All right?
That's right.
So give us odds. What are the odds of Barack Obama becoming president of the United States come November 4th?
I think the odds are tremendous, Jeff. Here you have
Is he favored? Would you take money and give? Would you give
Absolutely.
points, so to speak?
Absolutely.
You would take him as the favorite over John McCain.
Here's what Barack Obama has captured. He has younger individuals in high school, in grammar school. My 3-year-old daughter, my 5-year-old son, my 15-year-old daughter, my friends who would never have an inkling about politics. They may know me, but they don't follow politics. There are a lot of individuals here who simply are aloof or distant from the profession that
They're following
that I'm in.
politics now, is that what you're saying?
They have been so infatuated and so conscious and anxious to talk issues because there's a new voice, a new phenom that has just generated such a buzz in this country from coast to coast, all overseas.
But your kids at 2 and at 5 and at 15, they
Yes.
can't vote.
They can't vote, but they can say Obama, Barack Obama.
Right.
And
So how
that
does
is-
that help Barack Obama? They can't vote.
They're talking about it in schools. when little kids sit down in their daycare, in their kindergarten, or preschool,
So he's an inspiration.
he's an inspiration, and he is on the minds of every single person in the world today.
But here's this, and people will know this by the time they watch this because they'll be seeing McCain as the nominee. They'll see Obama. At that time, as you're watching it then, it'll be about 60 days to the election. And some people are saying, you know, Barack's all those things you just mentioned, but he's a bit thin on one thing, which is experience. You know? Like just 10 years ago, Barack was a 2 years out state senator. Just 10 years ago, McCain had a quarter of a century in the military and 16 years in the Congress. That was 10 years ago. You see what I mean?
But how would you rate President George Bush today in terms of experience? He
didn't have a lot of experience going in, and look what happened. I'm not sure that's a good example.
But
maybe we should have gone for somebody with more experience.
But
here's
where we are today. America is looking for substance. They're looking for people who are genuine, who are straight up, and someone who's going to inspire hope outside of the typical genre of political speeches.
But that sounds like John McCain. Here's inspiration. Here's this guy who was stuck it out for 5.5 years. He could have gone back, you know. He could have returned earlier as a prisoner of war after 2 or 3 years because his father was an admiral. The Vietnamese would have released him. He said, no, that's not the way you do it. You don't go, you leave in the order you came in. So he stuck it out. Genuine and war hero, maverick. He could cite so many things that he has walked across the aisle and worked with Democrats.
Sure.
McCain has, whether it's immigration, whether it's campaign finance, whether it's
taxes. So has Barack Obama.
No, not so much.
In the General Assembly,
what did he walk across the aisle and work on?
Barack, from the racial profiling to health care, for all that we see
all
today.
That stuff was passed in the last 2 years when the Democrats had the House and the Senate.
It's a process. In
I could have passed it, Ken. You could have passed it.
In our business?
Anybody,
oh, no, there's no way in the world you could have had
the last 2 years you had majorities in both.
Confession. Having health care for every child
but
in the state of Illinois.
But it didn't take Republicans. You just passed it with the Democrats' majority.
Raising the minimum wage. I mean, individuals who help set that stage.
Raising the minimum wage?
Well, if you look at individuals who rely on a particular job, profession, because they have very limited options. You have people
people become unemployed when you raise the wage above the market wage. How is a person better off being unemployed at $7.50 an hour than employed at $5.50?
We are in a service economy. We don't produce that much in America, unfortunately. Or we've shipped a great deal of our business outside of this country. Way before we raised the minimum wage. We're a service economy. So you have adults
but it exaggerates
our
that.
age, Jeff, our age, who are mandated to work those jobs because there are very limited jobs in certain cities in the state of Illinois, even in the city of Chicago to some degree. You have a number of individuals who have to change their skill set, or because their job has been faded out or relocated to Mexico, India, or China.
The fundamental problem with people who become unemployed often is the fact that they had low skills, low education, and therefore they don't have a lot to offer the market. That's often the problem. It's not exclusively. There are people with skills who are unemployed too. But the people who unemployment falls the heaviest on are people who didn't get a good education, don't have good skills. You would agree, right?
Or someone who worked at the Illinois Steel Works.
And and the world changed on them, and they have to be
20,
retrained.
30 years.
But that's some of the problem. But I'm just leading you back to, if your constituents are watching the show, and they're looking at you, and your constituents, what's your area? It goes as far to North Street, right?
I'm at North Avenue.
And then you go all the way to 61st.
All the way to 63rd and Cottage Grove.
And so on the west side boundary
Halsted Street on the northern end, Princeton and Normal on the western end. When you get out south, as far east as King Drive, as far east as 60. When you get to 60, I hit Cottage Grove to 63rd Street. So it's a pretty diverse area.
It's diverse, but a lot of your area is fairly low income, right?
Well, the southern end has traditionally been fairly low income, but it's changed. There's been a great deal of gentrification, if that's still a decent
What's
word
the
today.
racial composition of the district?
My district, when I started out, was at least 63% African American. Today, it's about half and half, at least.
And you're getting
of registered voters.
Middle class and upper class, upper income blacks in there.
Yes.
As the country changes, as race becomes less important in the economic strata, your district changes, right?
Absolutely.
But still, if you have a lot of low-income folks in there and they happen to be African American, what are they looking to you for Ken Dunkin to do? Would they like you to improve the quality of education for their kids?
Absolutely.
Is that the main thing?
That's the people in this country.
Is that perhaps the most important thing they might look to you as a state rep?
That's at the apex. But
what do you tell those two people? Say they got income of $40,000 or $50,000, They're going to a school that might be rated as a failing school in the Chicago public schools, and they would like a choice to go somewhere else. What do you say to those people?
I tell them to stay engaged and be involved in their kid's life.
You say stay in that school, even though the school's not performing, just keep doing it, just keep knocking your head.
And as well as you taking responsibility at home. Again, I have young children as well.
There's only so much you can do. You're right, you have to take responsibility, but sometimes you want competition to improve that public school.
Competition is good. Now, I won't be led into the voucher school choice issue, but back to
Well,
Barack Obama.
We'll come back to Barack, because you know what Barack once said in 2002? He would consider anything. This is before he was running for the Senate. On this show, Public Affairs, June of 2002, Barack Obama said he would consider anything that would improve what he said were the admittedly, this is Barack Obama, intolerable conditions of the inner city schools. I said even school vouchers. He said everything has to be on the table. That was Barack Obama in 2002. Do you agree with Barack Obama in 2002?
I think every single idea, big or small, must be on the table.
Including school vouchers.
School vouchers, to funding,
if
to
Barack
quality
can say
of
that,
teachers,
okay, right.
to quality of the facility that they're in.
You have to consider that.
Absolutely. Today we have such a disparate situation.
Do you know how much we spend in Chicago public schools?
You know, I've heard numbers from 6,000 to 14,000 as of late.
14,000 is right. I just checked with the budget director.
The number keeps changing depending on who you talk to.
I just checked with the folks at the Chicago Public Schools. They tell me the budget this year, $5.7 billion, counting the capital funds, counting operating funds, everything. Proposed budget for next year, $6.1 billion. That's billion with a B.
Yes.
About 410,000 students. If you divide the 410,000 into either of those numbers, you come up with about $14,000 per kid per year. So if there's anybody in the city of Chicago, in the Chicago Public Schools, Arnie Duncan, anybody, you want to dispute what your own bureaucracy has told me, come on the show and we'll at least like to hear from you. But until I hear otherwise, Reverend Meeks, whoever's watching this, you're spending $14,000. Somebody's spending $14,000 per kid per year. That's the average number in the Chicago Public Schools.
That's if you put the capital budget there as well, their annual capital
Why shouldn't it be there?
Well,
you can't ignore it. It does something.
But it's a separate item. So if you take the capital out, you'll be at about $6,000.
No, hardly anymore. You'll be about $12,000 at best. No. You cannot argue with this unless you're going to tell me you've talked with the Chicago Public Schools and they've told you differently. Okay, these are facts. As you know, Senator Moynihan once said, "Sir, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts." So, folks, these are the facts. Counting all costs, $14,000 per kid per year. I emphasize that because that's a fair amount of dough. And you take out the capital funds.
Take out operating and
it knocks it down to about 12. No,
what if you take out operating?
You can't take out operating. Stuff is either operating or capital. Ken, there's one or the other.
I'm speaking of
there's
spending on per pupil, per child, per school, not operating. Not because operating, you have operating engineers, you have truck drivers, you have cafeteria workers, you have capital.
Ken, you don't just
I'm saying
to operate
spend
the
on
school,
books, computers, on substantive learning,
you have to provide
specifically
the
for the child.
Well,
Ken,
nobody
you
talks
keep
that way.
inflating this number here, but I'm saying
it's the
specifically
total amount.
for that particular.
The point is, if $14,000 is being spent per kid per year, and your constituents, your parents want to say, "Give me that money, give me that voucher. I think I can do better. I think I can get more for my education on a private school, parochial or otherwise." Let them go. Let those people go. Why don't you go to Meeks and say, "What do you want, Mr. Meeks, Senator Meeks, Reverend Meeks? You want $14,000 per kid per year and to spend at school of your choice?" You know, we've invited Reverend Meeks to be on the show. About a week and a half ago, his press person told me, who was a press person from the Salem Baptist Church, she would be back to me in 5 minutes. It's been about 10 days.
He's a pretty popular individual.
Well, still, 5 minutes? Okay. The point is, Reverend Meeks, if you're watching this, or if you're the press person, you could be here with our guest Ken Duncan. You could be here separately. So we'll be fair to you. But look, this is an important point here, because he wants to go down to New Trier and complain about the amount of money that's being spent, and I don't think Senator Meeks knows $14,000 per kid per year.
Again, we have a fundamental either disagreement on adding all of those extras in there, operating to capital.
Well, but they added in when people say they're spending $18,000 in New Trier, they added in too. The point is, it ain't so different between New Trier expenditures and Chicago Public Schools. That's the overriding point. We don't want to take the whole show on that, but I think it's an important point, Ken. I think your constituents want to know why they can't have choice. You know, Barack Obama's got choice. He and Michelle send their kids to the University of Chicago Lab School, private school, okay? He's got enough money to have choice. Paul Vallis had choice, and he sent his kids to the Christian academies or something. So I want to know why your constituents shouldn't have that same choice. They may have lower income, but we're spending the money now. Why not give them that choice?
Well, here's the other part of that argument is money alone will not is not at the apex. Now, if we are saying that children or families need more options, let's say that, and I respect the voucher argument, but at the end of the day, parents, the community have to be involved. Teachers who are serious about their subject matter have to take things also to another level. You can pump in $30,000 per pupil, and you will not necessarily have a guaranteed outcome of a successful student based on money alone. There are some districts.
So what does Reverend Meeks want? What did you differ with Reverend Meeks?
I can't speak specifically on Reverend Meeks and what he wants, but I can tell you
what do you want?
Well, here's what Ken Dunkin wants. Ken Dunkin wants the best and the brightest teachers to stay in the system of Chicago Public Schools and all of our schools in the state of Illinois.
And you want the worst and the worst to go somewhere else.
Absolutely. Or
so
get out of the system.
And how do you handle that is you want to give somebody the decision to say, I'll pay you more, not because you've been here 14 years longer, but because you're doing a better job. And somebody else who's been there 20 years but is doing a crummy job, I'm getting rid of you.
It is.
You want that kind. Want that kind of operation, don't you? I mean, do you agree with me? Yes or no?
I agree that we should have teachers who want to teach sincerely
and who can teach. I don't care if they want to.
Yes, that's right. Absolutely.
So you agree with merit pay? Pay them for merit. If they do well, pay them more.
Agree.
If they don't, okay.
And the system in the Chicago public school system is what, 45,000+ people. It's a huge system. Huge system. There's no way in the world that you're going to have
45,000 or so teachers just alone, maybe even more.
There's no guarantee that you're going to have a great teacher in every classroom. And so what I'm saying, money isn't necessarily at the core of the real issue that we have. There are a number of,
if you get paid more for doing well and
absolutely.
Get paid less for doing poorly, you're going to have at the end of the day more good teachers.
I agree that we should pay our teachers a substantial amount of money because they do a tremendous job. They spend more time with our kids
we shouldn't just
than
pay
us
them, but right now,
during
the pay is set based on how many years they've been there. Okay, and you know, some of your state legislative friends have been there a long time, but they don't deserve more pay from you than you, right? You might come in and after 4 years be doing a better job than 14 years. Well, we can't quite change that system that way on the state legislative level, but we could change it on the teaching level.
Well, at the teaching level, again, the school is one, and I'll end with this point. Schools and the teaching component is one aspect. There are other
parental involvement. That's important.
But there are some real issues in our communities today, and it doesn't make a difference necessarily if it's just a poor community or just a middle class community. You have a huge surge of kids experiencing face-to-face with abject violence on the streets, suburbs, as well as especially in the city.
We need more gun control. We've been doing that for years, and more gun control has not led to fewer deaths, has it, from guns?
Depends on who you're getting your numbers from.
Well, homicides are going up in Chicago. You know that, right?
Just having the notion of
talk to Mayor Daley.
Just having the notion that individuals don't supposed to have guns, I think, gives us some sense of security. But to have the notion of that everyone is armed in our city.
Not everyone, but
what tone will we set, Jeff, if we say, hey, look, everyone should have a gun just to protect themselves or carry it on themselves or in their house? What tone would that set?
It's in the Second Amendment. It's in the Second Amendment.
I read it as well.
And the Supreme Court has just said a right to self-defense. If you're in your home and you think you can be safer by having a gun because somebody who's kind of bad guy is going to come in and he's going to wonder, do you have a gun or not? And if he thinks you can own a gun legally, maybe you got a gun, he's not coming in. What's wrong with that? Right now, he can go in and says, oh, that guy's law-abiding, he didn't have a gun. We want them guessing, do you have a gun? Because then they may not come in, they being the bad guys.
Sure.
Do you support that notion?
You know, that is a notion that is still being debated in Springfield.
And you're still debating in your own mind? You're not giving me an answer whether you'd support that?
You know, I would have to look at all the options. Okay. When we do law, we have to look at every single word, every single period, shall and may.
Let's get down to the brass tacks. Okay, the state issues, the capital plan, you said that's a big issue. The governor's proposing now a $25 billion capital plan. Do you support that?
I support a capital program immediately. Because
And you would finance that by, is he in agreement, he and you, the governor, with a lease of the lottery?
absolutely.
Okay. Speaker Mike Madigan's thinking about it, but he hasn't decided yet. Maybe by the time people see it, he may sign on. If he does, then you've got a capital plan, right?
He has indicated that he supports
But nobody trusts the governor. You trust the governor, but Speaker Mike doesn't.
Who is this nobody?
All the state reps who don't support him, they follow Speaker Mike. They say you have to have.
Do they follow
Lou Lang sat in that chair, and he doesn't trust him. He says you need a memorandum of understanding. You need a contract with that guy because his word ain't good.
Well, you have.
That's Lou Lang. He's a Democrat. You know that.
Jeff, in our
you know
business,
Lou. He's a colleague of yours.
yes, I sit right behind him. In our business, there are a lot of relationships, and there are a lot of individuals who also look for political advantage towards individuals who sometimes are sitting in the big seat. This governor, we've given him $50 billion. Did Lou Lang run for governor at one point?
Yeah, but that's over, and he still doesn't like the governor.
Did Bill Brady run for governor at one point?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Do you think that's the only reason? All the
Listen.
critics? Look, we're going to continue to speak as the credits roll. The time went too fast, but we very much want to thank our guest, State Representative Ken Duncan,
thanks.
who may himself be running for governor one day. Is that right?
Who knows?
Who knows? You could be. All right, so that's
Anything's possible.
That's the problem that the governor had, this problem of trust. You're saying it's only his enemies, but look, it's been going on, and Republicans and Democrats raise this. They say, he says one thing and does another.
But here's the thing. Is it that they don't trust the governor or that they are following the speaker's will?
They seem not to
Is
trust
that
him.
No,
Look, he spends money. He looks around the
depends-
budget. He says,
it
I
depends
got
on
10
who you
million
talk
here,
to.
I got 15
Jeff,
million.
we give this
Nothing's been
governor,
appropriated.
We give this governor $50+ billion every year. And that he spends it.
Okay.
So here's the thing.
But answer this. Aliani's sitting around a table like this. He's sitting there with the governor. He's sitting with Tony Resco. And the governor says, did you get a job for this guy, to Resco? And Resco says yes. And then a $25,000 check comes out on the table. You see what I mean? Pay to play.
But
is this governor synonymous with pay to play?
I can't say that. No.
Is he going to be
There's no way.
impeached? Should he be impeached?
No.
Is he going to be indicted? Is he going to be indicted? If he's indicted,
he will
should
not
he resign?
be indicted.
He will not.
You heard
You're
it
making
here.
that?
You will.
But if he were indicted, should he resign?
No.
He would stick it out and run as
absolutely.
He would be a governor trying to function.
You're an
as
attorney.
indicted governor.
You're an attorney. If if you're indicted, are you guilty?
No, but the U.S. Attorney does not indict people lightly, especially if it's governor of the state of Illinois.
Are you sure about that?
Have recent governors who were indicted. George Ryan, look where he is. He is indicted and he's doing time.
This governor should stay if any notion that he.
So you don't think he's done an impeachable offense?
No.
No credible evidence.
Such as what?
And you don't think he's done something
What
that's
has he
indictable?
done that speaks to?
Has he taken money from somebody who he shouldn't have and given something in return?
I have no idea whatsoever.
You have no idea.
in
What about
terms of
that
knowledge.
What about Aliata and his testimony? Was that an indictable offense?
You had individuals who.
Do you believe Aliata?
I don't know Aliala from.
But
from
you know
yesterday.
the story that he told
From
in
yesterday.
trial.
But
he said basically money was passed for a job.
Stu Levine went along with the federal government to save his own
Blagojevich
nose.
appointed
Aliata probably did the same thing.
appointed Stu Levine there after George Ryan.
In our business, we run across individuals of all sorts. There's no way in the world that you can control or understand or know emphatically every single individual's background
Why
or
did
what
he
their
put Stu
intent.
Levine there? Did he think he was a guy who was going to do the governor's bidding?
Maybe because Stu Levine had already been there for
Why
a
did
number
he
of
hang
years,
with?
and he
Why
had
did he hang
experience.
with? Why did the governor hang with Tony Resco all this time?
In our business, you hang, you run.
Did you hang with Tony Resco?
No, but you
You
need
knew
all
better.
kind of
You knew
characters
better.
and interesting folks.
But
in
you
this
wouldn't
world,
run with that
Jeff.
character, would you? Would you run with Tony Resco? He's now been convicted. Are you going to defend Tony Resco?
I don't know Tony Resco, so I can't defend him. But what I'm saying in our business, as you well know.